You were the first roofing contractor I ever sold 8 years ago for my first company, Build Your Sales Team. I cold called you on Craigslist. And at the time, we had this really cheap weekly service. And it was the easiest sell I had gotten. I was like 90 days into my entrepreneurial experience, 3 to 6 months, at least for like the whole recruiting idea. And I think I talked to you for like 10 or 15 minutes and you gave me money. And I'm like, well, that was the easiest sell I've ever gotten. So
I'm a great judge of character. That's what it comes down to.
Just cold call random guy from Craigslist. Here's my credit card. So when that happened, I'm like, wow, maybe these like construction guys, maybe they have a lot of money. They're the easy sells. So that's where like the whole roofing and construction and direct to consumer outside sales thing came into play. And then within 30 days, you referred me to Joe Hoffman's company, I believe, Weber Construction.
Oh,
yeah. And then they had like a few markets at the time. And, all of a sudden I entered into this direct to consumer outside sales world, and it's been 8 years. So anyways, full circle.
And the irony is it was 8 years later that I was talking to Joe about hiring problems. And he's like, well, have you talked to Ryan? I thought, man, I forgot about that. Let me call him.
Yeah. So funny. So yeah, we're over 8 years-ish later, and now you're working with Sales Recruiting University. And yeah, just grateful for you. So first question, who are you and what do you do?
Philip Petrie. I am one of the owner Craftsmen Contractors based in Lexington, Kentucky.
Yeah. And how long have you been in roofing and construction?
In roofing since 2009, I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Why were you seeking commission-based sales recruiting services?
We were struggling. We were really struggling. We kept trying to bring, kind of a new sales force on for the season.
Yeah.
And we're just having a hard time getting people who are willing to go out and sell.
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but over the last couple of years, few years, have you done more like retail where they're selling year round and you were bringing back like the outside door-to-door sales kind of thing and scaling that back up, right?
Yeah, we made a shift from storm work into retail, and that's been a great journey.
Yeah.
But then, once your sales guys are used to leads, they're not going to go knock on doors anymore. When they're making six figures doing what they're told to do, they don't want to go and self-gen. So we were just having a hard time. We kept trying to find people and just couldn't get a solid team out knocking. Because when you hire them onesie twosie, it doesn't work out so well. So
yeah. And speak to that a little bit more. Like, what were your frustrations and detail around recruiting before connecting with us?
We couldn't get anybody in the door if we were honest about what we were hiring for, right? So we're hiring, high income opportunity self-gen reps, and and we were, for the first time since we've been in the industry, really struggling to get people in the door on that side of things. When we get people in, they jump at the opportunity to run retail sales or office leads. But getting people to canvas, for whatever reason, we just struggled, I think, for 2 years to get a solid team in place.
Yeah. 2 years. So how did, working with us make your life easier?
Well, I still don't understand how it happened, but I think it was what we talked and agreed to do it. And then Jacob did the first interview 2 weeks later, and you had 30 people on the call, which blew our minds. We're like, this is impossible. Like, I don't know, paying people. And then the next week it was another 30.
Yeah.
And I think we only did 3 weeks, right? I think we did three group interviews.
Yeah.
And then from those group interviews, narrowed them down, brought them in, and in that 3 week period, we only wanted to hire 6 guys. We weren't looking for a huge, we don't need a ton of people. And we got all 6 in the first, I think, 2 weeks. The last one we didn't hire anybody. So I think it was 2 weeks of interviews, and we got 6 solid people.
Love it. Yeah, you guys were doing, I think, 1 group interview per week on Tuesdays because you didn't need to recruit a ton of volume. We hit the 6 within 2 weeks. And then the 3rd group interview was kind of unnecessary because I think you guys were, packed out.
It was already scheduled, so we kept it.
Yeah, and so it's been exactly 60 days. I know you said that as of right now, those 6, reps are still with you. Now that's usual. Usually there's more attrition with, in this type of, sales model. You guys are really a really good company, really good brand, good opportunity, good comp plan, good leaders. So, that's why your retention rates are are high, but you know, you guys have retained 6 so far. I know you said they just threw in this last Saturday like 12 deals, which was like 150K in revenue.
Something like that. Yep.
Yeah, and we were doing the numbers before this call, in the first like 60 days, those 6 reps have done somewhere between, you said, like 300 to 400K in revenue in their first 8 weeks.
Somewhere around there. Yeah. Potentially more. There are a lot of deals that are, you know, waiting on adjusters, and so it's hard to say. There's one deal that I think is going to be potentially 200,000 or 300,000 in one deal alone.
Killer. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that, my friend. So yeah, what would you say to somebody, you know, considering to work with us?
You know, honestly, it's such a no-brainer, and I did it because I know you, but also Joe told me the same thing when he just said, dude, just do it. It kind of seems expensive until you think about it and you start seeing the results. It's really not. It's actually wildly cheap. So not saying you should increase your prices, at least for your existing clients, but it's just an absolute no-brainer. It takes the pressure off and gets butts in the seats, and it's been incredible.
Yeah. Last question. What would you say is like the number one thing you like about working with us?
I think the number one thing that I like is that you were able to get a lot of people in front of us that we could talk to without manipulating or distorting what was happening. So I think a lot of times when people are hiring for canvassing roles or for self-gen roles, they're not telling the whole story, and people end up surprised when they're in the interview. And I think the way that you set it up, they know what they're walking into and they're excited to walk in. So I don't know how you get them pumped up, but they're excited to be there and excited to be part of the interview process. And then I think the other thing that was great is that initially the idea of doing group interviews seems really daunting. And in our case, the person who did it, he felt the same way, but because you had it all lined out for him, he just followed the script. He just did what you told him to do, and it went great. And so I think the combination of your ability to get people there and present, listening and excited about the opportunity, and then the direction that you give us to be able to do those group interviews. I think, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are used to group interviews. We're not. We'd never done group interviews. And I probably wouldn't have even considered it if it was anybody else. But now that we've experienced it, now I don't know that I would want to go and do group interviews outside of your program, because I don't know how we could make that work as effectively. I don't think we could. So I'd say those two things were my favorite. Well, mostly you got reps in the door that are happy to be here and doing well. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, just a side note, we'll end this, is that whole model, like it cuts out like, you know, 75, 80% of the time investment to recruiting, obviously, right? It's only at least it's only like 10 to 15% of what we do. But, you know, guys like yourself and all sorts of different industries, they'll say, hey, can you help me fill this role, like project manager or an administrative assistant or customer service or whatever the employee type salaried role is. We do the same thing for that process, and it produces like the same thing. So that's just a note based on what you said. I don't know if I do this outside of sales. So the model.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So anyways, we can talk about that later, but it's been super interesting. I appreciate your time though. We're good to go.
Yeah, man.